Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
And this is Ellen coming to you from the beautiful island of St. Bart's, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Coming to you direct from New York City, this is Dennis, and you're still listening to Light Talk.
And this is David coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. If you don't already know, by my brothers and sisters, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
I'm Sister.
That's right, Ellen. Welcome, everyone, to episode 449. And today, we have two guests on. It's fabulous. We've got not one, but two guests, Leo Lay and Sam Molitoriss. How you doing, guys? Welcome to Light Talk.
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Doing great. Thank you.
It's good to have you. They're just laughing because it's taken us like 10 minutes to get this show started today because we've been having brain farts all over the place. But here we are. We're here. And why don't we just jump in? Dennis, could you tell us a little bit about our guests today?
Sure thing. Leo Lay is the assistant professor at the University of Florida School of Theater and Dance, Lighting Design and Production, Lighting Technology, and Media Design. Leo is an award-winning lighting, sound, and projection designer, as well as a dedicated educator. With an MFA degree in lighting design from Kent State University, Leo has been sharing his expertise with students for many years, starting his teaching career at Santa Fe University of Art and Design with lighting design and technologies. He previously served as the program director of Entertainment of Design and Technology and associate professor of lighting and sound at the School of Stage and Screen at Western Carolina University. Leo's design credits include productions such as Into the Woods, Beauty and the Beast, Twelfth Night, Noises Off, Cabaret, Company, Footloose, Grease, and Mousetrap. His recent media design for Disability was featured on Chicago Children's Theater's Virtual Stage, while his recent sound and projection design for Jabari Dreams of Freedom was showcased at the New Victory Theater off-Broadway in the Big Apple, New York. Leo is a versatile designer who is sought after not only for his theatrical work, but also for his ability to design lighting and sound for corporate events, concerts, and music festivals internationally. His work has been recognized with numerous awards, including first place of Graduate Lighting Design Award for Sideshow in the 67th Southeast Theater Conference, the SETC, and the Best Lighting Design of a Play or Musical from Broadway World Central New York Awards, both in 2022 and in 2023. And if that's not enough, we have a second guest. Sam Molitoriss is a partner in Lightright, the industry-standard lighting management software relied upon by lighting professionals worldwide. Sam is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University School of Drama, where he studied lighting design and photography. He began his career in New York working for lighting designer Ken Billington before shifting his focus to video and projection design. During the pandemic, Sam partnered with Lightright's creator John McKernan to form Lightright LLC, with the shared vision of evolving the software into a sustainable, forward-looking platform for the lighting industry. While Lightright occupies most of his time, he continues to freelance occasionally as a video programmer in commercial theater and live events. When he's not in front of a computer or at a tech table, Sam can be found running through Central Park or in the kitchen cooking and exploring his love of food and wine. Welcome, gentlemen.
It's good to have you here. I have a bunch of questions to ask you guys, but why don't we just get started and have Ellen ask our first question?
Okay. The first question is, Vectorworks Spotlight has become an all-encompassing drafting tool, 3D modeling space, data manager, and pre-production hub. Is this workflow worthwhile, or are we reaching the limits of what a single piece of software can reasonably handle?
We would need to think about what is how do we define limit? Yeah, because to me, as an educator, I think sky is the limit. So anything is possible. And tools, those software, no matter Vectorworks, Spotlight, or some other lighting drafting tools like a WYSIWYG, Stan is a big fan of WYSIWYG, I think. So they can all have their different expertise or advantage and disadvantage, pros and cons. And I think this really depends on the people who use it. Yeah, and for myself, I love to have the experience to see what all the software can provide, and that create a good environment, making the tools become better and better. So there's a little competing here and there, and we all know for the customer and user, compete or collaboration is always good for the end user.
But if you were looking at one piece of software like Vectorworks Spotlight and expecting it to be an all-encompassing drafting tool, a 3D modeling space, a data manager, and a pre-production hub, can one piece of software do all that realistically?
I would say yes, and I think that is what they're trying to do. With the recent showcase, they're trying to have the visualization built into Vectorworks Spotlight. I think it's possible. Yeah, and some other software have already been doing that. Like WYSIWYG have different modules for all-in-one solution.
Yeah, I think the consolidation of different tools has pros and cons, right? I mean, I think in the past few years, what Vectorworks has done is to sort of expand their tool set, right? You look at in the past, 5 to 7 years, the acquisition of Vision has been a huge addition to their tool set, right? And it works more seamlessly. And then, like Leo said, the new showcase feature with Pre-viz. So I think this was a student who asked this question. Is that okay?
Yes.
Let me tell this answer a bit more. As far as should you be learning tools like this, should you put effort into learning how Showcase works, how Vision works? The answer is yes. But I would also say there are other tools, right, that are purpose-built for Pre-viz, purpose-built for 3D modeling. And really it's just about the team in which you're working and the skills you want to learn. And I think it's in terms of a student's perspective, right? You should be looking at things like Capture and WYG and Depends for those 3D modeling and Pre-viz tools as well. And I think that, there's tools like WYG and Capture, right, that do sort of the all-encompassing paperwork, drafting, 3D modeling, and Pre-viz. And that can also be very useful to a lot of people who are on a budget as well, right? I think Vectorworks is a much more premium product than something like Capture, and there's different pricing there, right? And that can be a decision that you and your team can make during the production process as far as what your budget is, what your client expectations are. And they can go the other way as well. If you want something that is rock solid and you're working on a high profile project, maybe you want to choose a Pre-viz software that is purpose built for Pre-viz, right? Something like Depends, or just using Vision or something like that. Right? I think there's lots of different options. But as far as whether I'll gear toward as far as what a student should be looking at is amassing a repertoire of all these different technologies. Whether they sort of bring everything under one roof is good for Vectorworks of the business, I can't really say. But I'll go back to I think it's good for someone like a student to have exposure to all these technologies.
But keeping that in mind, Sam, with Vectorworks and Lightwrite and Augment and Unreal and Capture and Depends and all of these that are in play, should they be moving toward consolidation or should they keep being fragmented? I mean, let's face it, how many tools can students reasonably be expected to learn before they leave school and go out into the real world?
That's a great point. There's not time to learn them all. I remember going to college and we had very little, exposure to all these different platforms. There were different things we could choose to be exposed to. But if you look at Pre-viz, you've got Unreal, Depends, Carbon for Unreal. You've got Vision. You've got a whole host of things. You've got MA3D. You've got Augmented. That's just in the Pre-viz. There's L8 as well. There's a whole host of tools that you almost have to choose what you're exposed to. And for students, it's going to be what technologies they have at their program, if they do have any. And once you get out of school, it's going to be chosen by the teams on which you work. If you're going to go into doing a bunch of renderings for a boutique concert lighting firm, you might probably going to end up with something like Depends. Is that going to help you when you're trying to do a small show? Maybe not. You might not be able to afford that on your own. So I think it's a tough question to say, should everybody be coming together and embracing one or two platforms that can do everything? I think the market's going to say probably not. Because at the end of the day, our workflows are so specific, even within, say, the theater, commercial theater, right, which I can probably speak to the best. Different people have all sorts of different workflows. There are some standards, right? We say, yes, we know what a light plot should look like. We know what a channel hookup should look like. Pre-viz is still a little bit of the Wild West here over on Broadway. But there's a massive network effect we have in our industry. And getting people to adapt different platforms is a slow moving target. So take that what you will. I'm going to punt a little bit. I'm not sure if that's a satisfactory answer. I'll also say that competition is good in general. And, a jack of all trades is a master of none. And that jack of all trades might be a useful product for someone, but for other people, they really might want the master of one trade to do something very specific for one project.
Yeah, I want to say something here because this has a lot to do with what we've been talking about now for years, and that is AI. Most of the complaints we get about Vectorworks is that it's too hard to learn, and it's very convoluted, from some people's opinions, not a very well-structured, user-friendly program. And if you've listened to this show, I'm always talking about when the hell are we going to get an AI light board where, a designer could say, I want you to take fixtures 5, 7, 13, focus them at +5, right 6, zoom them out, put cyan in them, and chase them, at 3 beats a second, and then randomize them. Or say, I want this cue to look like Theron Musser's cue in Chorus Line from this point. Okay? Now, that's obviously a intellectual property question, but the technology is there to do this. Let me explain something to you that happened to me today, and this is a very interesting thing. As you guys know, I'm a musician and I'm a keyboard player, and I work with these very complex keyboards, and some of them have very complex operating systems, very similar to if you're working on a very complex program like Vectorworks. And I was on Copilot today, and I just asked the Copilot, I want to design the same sounds using this controller, which is a Yamaha MoDX, from the song Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is a Tears for Fears song. How do I do that using this board? And in 2 seconds, it returned to me exactly, step by step, what to do, almost to the key punch. But told me what to do, what part to put this sound in, how to shape this sound, what filters to put that sound in 2 seconds. What would it take for Yamaha to put that same technology, as long as you have obviously Wi-Fi, into their board so that instead of telling me what to do, it just does it? All right? Obviously, the technology is there. We had a guest on the show.
So what are you waiting for?
Yeah,
what
the question is, what the hell are you guys waiting for? Because don't you realize that this is really what's happening? We're telling a couple young people, get on board with technology. And we're still trying to figure out how to draw a boom in Vectorworks. I mean, I saw this thing. Someone posted, why can't I put a damn sidearm on here that will connect these two trusses? I mean, come on. So when are we going to get these programs so that we don't have to teach students 5 or 6 different programs that don't really interrelate very well? I mean, what's the future there? What do you guys think? I mean, it's your future. Wow.
You've rendered them speechless, David.
I'm sorry. I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying, why is that not here? I mean, Lightright. I mean, really, who really needs it anymore? Who really needs these programs anymore? Because, I mean, doesn't Vectorworks do its own paperwork? It may be a little rough.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think you got to... So the AI question, I was waiting for that to come up. Super important. What you just said, might be a little bit rough. That, I think, is the blocker here, right? No matter if you're looking at a consolidated paperwork drafting mega program, whatever that might be, like we were talking about before, or if it's just some AI magic box. I think the trouble that our industry is going to have and is having is it exactly what I want to do? And also, is it what I'm used to? I mean, there's so much inertia about what we do because we've done it. And I'm not a huge fan of all that. And I think my generation is much less reticent to just throw away what we have, right? And looking at better processes. I think that's good. Of course, it has to be balanced with, working under existing conditions. But it's a good point. I think when you look at, an overall, hey, I'm going to put on my vision glasses and talk into an AI and it's going to light the show for me. I think a large reason why we haven't seen this yet, or practically the reason, is the business feasibility of it that you really have to look at. We've seen such large investment from very large corporations, right, on reducing their workload and their workforce with AI. That's very, very expensive. If you're coming up with your own model, you've got to hire all these PhDs who have been studying LLMs and all these software engineers. If you're using someone else's model, like OpenAI's model, it's those tokens add up and it's very, very expensive. So when you get to an industry like ours, where budgets are tight, the reality is that I don't think it's democratized enough for our industry to take advantage, because this could happen in one of two ways, right? You could have someone like an extant console manufacturer, Grand MA, etc., say, hey, we're going to now have this AI VR headset you're going to put on, and we're going to light the show for you. The amount of development resources that they would have to put into it currently with how it's priced is outrageous. And then if you look at the flip side, would be some startup trying to, move really fast with a sort of a startup flexibility. Even that, you're going to burn millions and millions, and it's going to take a couple of years to just have a minimum viable product. And is it worth it? Are you going to be able to, to find investment to say, hey, my idea is I want to go replace a Broadway lighting designer and a Broadway lighting programmer and a Broadway assistant, and that VC might say, "Huh?" So I think we all want these things to become easier and more democratized. I think that'll happen over time, but sort of the one tool to rule them all currently is very cost prohibitive. So I think that's why it's going to take a while for us to get that. And I think our industry, we talked a bit about how we're using other people's tools, and we always have done that. But I think this is really an example where that technology is going to need time to mature in the larger market before it can be used for something super, super niche, like like lighting a concert.
What was that program that was at LDI a couple of years ago called Maestro?
Right, the one where you could it was $500 or $700 or something, and you could hook it up to some music and it would do an AI, and it was the talk of the town because it was so unpopular. I think that was for two reasons, right? Number one, there's the labor consideration, which is real. I mean, luckily, the freelance stuff I do is in commercial theater, and there's a lot of labor of union protection there. I think that's going to help us in the future. That's not everywhere, though, right? That's only in certain markets. So I think everybody was upset about that. The other thing is, it also just, the results weren't as good, right? For something to be that cheap and undercut the market, what you're looking for is value. What a producer is looking for is, okay, I'm going to hire this solution, whether it be a little stick I stick in my computer or this box, whatever, or a person with the box, right? Versus a whole team of lighting professionals. Is that going to be cheaper? And is it going to deliver a result that is worth the value? So I think that's another thing is AI makes mistakes all the time. Is it good enough to fit into a niche industry like ours? I think eventually, absolutely. Right.
And the Tony goes to the box.
Yes, it is economics. It's economically driven.
At the end of the day, someone's got to be selling this box.
Point.
So it's got to work
That's
out.
right. That's right. And that's kind of scary. I mean, that's a lot of money to put into R&D for that. And you're right, just to pay for the shit. It's pretty cool.
Right.
So.
And to Sam's point, the startup is going to go up against the extant companies. Like some startup like Maestro, even if it was better, is still going to fight for market share against ETC and Grand MA.
I don't think it's going to be a startup. I think it's going to be ETC or the other big ones.
And look, I don't know the ins and outs of MA lighting and ETC, but just looking at the size of their business on paper, I mean, I don't think the capital is there to finance something like this at the current prices of these technologies. Is that going to change? Absolutely.
Yeah. I have a thought, like for the AI. So at this stage, I think it's coming very soon. But for this stage, I think they might want to work with create something that helps the programmer or the lighting designer. So it's not fully designing, but like helping some designer doesn't know how to use their board. Yeah, maybe that, or
right,
or even
exactly.
if they don't want to come up with something. I think maybe some developer, they just happen to be a designer. They might create something. Like we can control the board via like OSC or some other remote control protocols. And they can write a software, which is AI powered, that could help them to control the board. I think that's coming very soon. Yeah.
Yeah, and in the video world, that's already
right
here. If you look at what Disguise just came out with in the past few months, right? They have their Ask Aid, and that is, I believe, in it's out now. It's gold. Again, that's gotten very mixed reviews. There's a lot of people who are very upset about that. Say, why are we replacing programmers? As a video programmer, I have mixed opinions about it. I think programming tools, Leah, like you said, are the easier, more low-hanging fruit to grab, right? We're not replacing labor at this point. We're just trying to streamline people's workflows and save people time. I think that's great. The line is going to be, especially in labor-sensitive markets, right, which I agree with, is, are we replacing labor at this point?
But, in a way, if we do create, or someone creates a lighting console that is easier to program, that means it's quicker, which means programmers are not going to make as much money as they did on a show as they used to, because the programming will go faster. So we're not going to have overtime. We're not going to have a lot of that stuff.
Fine by me. Then now we can get into the whole number 10 out of 12 thing and look at I'll say I'm of the opinion that overtime is a penalty. Right. I think I would rather work. And a lot of the shows I've done, there was a show I did this spring that had 10 out of 12s. That was the first Broadway show I've done in, I think, 18 months since then that had 10 out of 12s. And I'm not saying all shows are like that now. That's just my experience. But there is a push to, if you look at it from the management side, there's a push to save money. Are we working efficiently from the hours of 10 p.m. to midnight? The answer is no, and everyone knows that, right? If we can find a way to shorten or make more efficient the most critical piece of the tech puzzle, which is the lighting programmer, sometimes the video programmer, but usually the lighting programmer is the person who is holding up tech, right? Because tech goes at the speed at which the lighting designer and lighting programmer work. If we can make that faster, I think that is in abstract, it's a great thing.
I'd like to throw a question out to Leo that came in from Sloan, a draftsperson and designer in New York who actually graduated from UF. And Sloan wanted to know, with the industry shifting toward 3D first workflows, should academic programs be doing the same? Is a 2D first approach still appropriate, or does it put students at a disadvantage? To what degree should lighting students be comfortable working in 3D modeling moving forward? And I think one of the things that I find, by the way, is when I'm looking for people to do drafting, everybody can do 2D without much problems, but 3D drafts people are hard to come by.
Okay. Yeah, I think I totally agree with the industry is shifting towards a 3D first workflow, and everyone, if they know how to do drafts 3D, they can show off their 3D drafting, and it's really it looks really good. And if that also, I think that fits in more of the workflow for visualization. So in the academic work, I think I am pushing that, because hopefully the tools that we're using is making that easier and easier. I think that's their goal, to make the tools becomes easier to learn to use. And with the proper teaching method, I think I have confidence to teach my student to how to draft in 3D, no problem. And there are many different software that actually making this easier than not too long ago, like 10 years ago. So I think, it is the trend. And as the educator here, I am also trying to prepare the student to fit in the workflow of the professionals, so they would have some advantage too when they're trying to get jobs.
So ultimately, it'll make them more marketable.
Totally, definitely.
Interestingly enough, though, as you know, one of the things that Sam mentioned earlier about the New York world is it's like the Wild West. And I find the same thing in a lot of the broadcast projects I do, where you pre-plan and then stuff gets thrown out the window at the last minute. It's a bit crazy. So as students, and I see this with younger people coming out of school that I work with, as the Pre-viz tools become more realistic, I'm seeing that the students are trusting the renders too much. You know, Vectorworks and other platforms encourage very precise drawings, but, theater, television, rock and roll, it's so dynamic and everything is so unpredictable once you get into the facilities. How do you teach students to understand drafting as a framework rather than an exact representation of what's really going to happen? Because when we go to job sites, everything gets thrown out the window.
For sure. Even the university productions, we experienced that as well.
Every move into the theater is hell week if you can't adapt on your feet once you get in there.
But when you're right out of school, I think the students have a tendency to rely on what they know, and what they know at that point, especially with something that's pre-viz, is what they're holding in their hands on paper, not having to do the triage and the chaos that needs to be solved on site at the last minute.
Yeah, for that's a very good question. And I think any professional have some experience on that. And I love to talk to the student about my experience as well. All the stories that what we think is going to happen and it's not in the real world. So yeah, totally telling the student that no matter how good the Pre-viz or even just the 2D drafting presents, but there will be some different. We can't rely, especially on the Pre-viz stuff. And I think the student all agree with me that right now, at least, the rendering engine still can't do photorealistic real-time Pre-viz. So they understand that it's a little different than what we're seeing on stage. And I encourage them to do some renderings to communicate the design ideas for people that may not speak lighting. Yeah, so that's a very good tool to communicate our lighting ideas. But we can't rely on that to pre-program everything, like based on what we see on the computer screen, at least for theater. Yeah, maybe for concert and stuff.
It definitely depends on the industry.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, it's a bit of the Wild West out here on Broadway, at least, just because the way to make, in my experience, I'll talk a bit more about video later, and I can think the opposite. But there's not a great way to slot that in because you're dealing so much with lighting characters and very specific scenery and specific cuts, and it's hard to find the time to pre-viz that accurately. I think in other industries it's very, very different.
Well, you saw that in its kind of crudest form years ago at LDI when Hog had the Hog Factor shows. And they were bringing in, 3 teams, and they had pre-vised everything. They got there on site, and they were always a little surprised at how much cleanup they had to do. The work was still good, but when they saw it actually happening, all of a sudden the timing had to change. Something had to tilt. Something had to pan. It wasn't quite what they were seeing on the screen, and it always kind of caught them by surprise. And to their great merit, all those teams adapted really fast.
Yeah, and for Hog Factor, I think that's something that actually pre-viz is very helpful. Yeah, we're not lighting mainly the characters, so you don't really need to worry about like how what's the percentage. Yeah, we're looking at the effect, the lighting effect, and the light show. So even that, there's a lot of tweak from the screen to the actual show. So yeah, I think the pre-viz is still not there to rely on for programming for theater pieces, but certain element is still helpful. When we are programming things like LEDs, like in the matrix or something, that's helpful. Yeah, to know what they need to be on, or otherwise we will forget about it, and there would be a lot of more nodes during tech. Yeah, so something can be utilized in theater for programming.
As a video programmer, I think it's in theater, it's very much the opposite, and really kind of, I think, in no matter what industry you're looking at, and I think that's mostly due to the platforms that we use have integrated pre-viz engines into them and have since the start. So it's much more of the designers and everyone are also very much on board and sort of facile with this concept of, hey, we're going to slot the content in on the surfaces that have all been prepped beforehand. And depending on how much time, yes, we can do the whole show, or, rough top of scenes, etc. So I think it's a little different there. But still, of course, we're tweaking color, and that's fine. And we're always going to tech a show and tweak everything. But it's interesting to see that certain teams have adopted pre-viz, at least on Broadway, at least, right? It depends on the team. Certain teams have definitely adopted pre-viz, and certain teams haven't. I think it's somewhat of a generational thing, but it also just depends on the show as well. The timelines are so tight that a lot of times you just don't have the time to do that. But even as a video programmer, it's rare that we'll be able to say, hey, can we find not only the time, but for me, but the time for everyone to be together in one room. If we have a designer flying in, different people flying in, it can be tough to coordinate that as well. I think ultimately pre-viz is a great way, in my opinion, looking towards the future of trying to be more smart about how we're spending our time in the theater. I think pre-viz is a great way to do a lot of the work that might be tedious. I'm talking lighting here, specific things in advance. Since the pre-viz engines have gotten so good and can do those things I was talking about earlier, like complex shutter cuts, they can do all that. If you have the model prepped correctly. And I want to harp back to something that we were talking about earlier, moving into a space, right? That can be an adjustment that if you've teched the whole show, or you've pre-viz the whole show, right? And you're sure that everything's going to fit in, I think that's great. That's usually what happens. What you don't want to do is pre-viz the whole show and something doesn't fit, and then you have to make adjustments. But I do think that in terms of spending smarter time in the theater, that pre-viz is hopefully going to be a great tool in the future.
Yeah, just FYI, pre-viz has been around for at least 15 years in professional theaters. I mean, my first show at Covent Garden was all pre-vized. I sat in a room with a programmer for about 3 days and lit the show in pre-viz and just in a room. Because at Covent Garden, at the Royal Opera House, you don't have time to focus and to light in the show, because they have three different habits. They have a ballet in the afternoon, they have a performance at night, they have an opera, and they have a new opera and text in the morning. So it's very, very tight that time. So
they were also pretty advanced about that. They were using that Maya program before anybody in the States even knew what it was.
I think that we have an opportunity of expanding Pre-viz so that, we could use what they call eye vision goggles and things like that. So you can actually see Pre-viz in a much more inclusive, encompassing way.
I mean, that's the dream, right? You put on a VR headset, you light the show, you take off your headset, you go to the theater that night, and then there's your changes in preview number 5, right? And you could do everything in a separate room. The actors could work in work light and something, at the same time. Yeah, just a better use of everyone's time, I think, is the goal, right?
The crazy thing now, though, is that it goes to my earlier point, that technology is here. We have the technology to do that. It's just that no one's sort of synthesized all this into one platform to do all this. What my hypothesis, why isn't this here now, right, is I think if you look at it from a business perspective, it's something that's kind of rather difficult to do.
Yeah,
you're talking about launching a novel technology that no one's used with an industry that has a giant network effect, and you kind of need that seed. So I think it's more likely going to come from somewhere like a console manufacturer, probably, or a Pre-viz, right?
We had which guests did we have on about 5 weeks ago? We were talking about this, and I asked them the same question, and I said, when is this going to happen? He said that lighting manufacturers are scared to do it.
Wasn't that Marcel? Marcel was talking
about.
Yeah,
Marcel said it, right. They're scared to do it because they're afraid that, like, let's say ETC comes out with this board that you could talk to and it does all that stuff, is that that people are going to actually not use it in protest because programmers are going to be put out of work, because it's going to be so disruptive to the labor force that they're going to be afraid to do it. But someone's going to do it. Someone's going to do it. And as soon as someone creates this program for my keyboard workstation, I'm going to buy it. I don't care what it is. So if ETC came out with this board, I don't think people are not going to buy it. I think they're going to buy it. I think the other company's going to have to do it. I think, again, it's like, why would you have robots? If a robot comes out, you're going to put a ton of people out of work. If you have a robot delivery of Amazon packages, you can put all those truck drivers out of work. You think that's going to really keep them from doing it? Well, maybe it is.
No, they're already using drones, aren't they?
When I meant robots, it's the robot drones. I don't think people are going to have a choice. I hate to be so dark about this, but I think this is reality. What's happening in our world right now. So I'm just curious, when that step is going to be taken. And it's not like I want to put people out of work. Don't get me wrong, because I'm going to be put out of work.
I think it's
you're retired anyway.
No, I'm retired as a professor, as an educator. I'm not retired as a designer. So I'm still out there designing shows. I have a show going to Tech in 2 weeks.
Right, I'm teasing you.
Yeah, but my question is, what's going to happen to, people your age, when you're like, 30, 40, 50 years old, and now, the director doesn't need a lighting designer.
That's great.
What's that line about? The line about video killed the radio star, and here we are doing a podcast on radio.
Well, we could do it on video, but we're too ugly to do it on video. But you're not, Ellen, but we are. I'm talking about the guys. I'm just telling you about it.
You can have that right now, David. You can have it right now. On your next show, dress up your programmer like the robot from Woody Allen's Sleeper, and you just yell at him.
But that's a good point, David. Leo and Sam, what is the future for younger people?
In terms of labor, I mean, David makes a good point. A one way to think about it is quite dark and scary, and it's not this industry that is the problem. It's just it's not unique to this industry. Let me say, it's just sort of how is labor going to change in the next, I think, even 5 to 7 years. I think we'll know more in 1 to 2 years as the real utility of these large, of all these LLMs really comes to fruition, and see what number one, what corporate America really does with it, how many jobs are they really cutting? I use ChatGPT, Gemini, and Anthropic products every single day for all different purposes. And I use them to help me be quicker at what I do, in all areas of my work and personal life as well. I think that's great, that I can focus on the larger picture. I think one thing related to a theater that I just did a few weeks ago was I had a bunch of points on the deck, and they were kind of formed a circle. I had distoed them. I said, hey, find me the circle, its center, radius, all that stuff. And that things like that, where it's just simple algorithmic things that take the cognitive load off of me trying to do something else, I think is great. I don't have a position, of course, for me. I don't run Amazon. I'm not contending with replacing tens of thousands of workers with robots. But AI is such a great thing for reducing those tiny tasks. I think we're gonna have to see if it's gonna reduce the labor force in general, and then we get into a whole bunch of different political conversations, which I'm not really educated enough to talk about, in terms of how do we deal with this as a society. In terms of our industry, I will say, I think it's going to take whatever these changes are, it's going to take some time to hit us because we're always behind. We're always, borrowing tools from other industries, whether it's graphics cards or MIDI, right? All these things are secondhand, or even tertiary tools that we are using. And a lot of our industry is very old school. Like you look at film and TV, there's a lot of film and TV folks who are just beginning to look at, more complicated systems with things like DMX, right? So I think there is a certain level of protection in our industry because we're so special and niche in how we work, and we have to, I think that's just developed naturally because we create such unique and special products. So the commercial elements, I think, are going to take a while to trickle down to us. Will it happen? Yes. Is it going to go the direction that it goes in the larger market? I think so. And we'll see.
I just got rid of the saltwater dimmers in a studio that I'm doing. And I'll tell you, these newfangled Thyrotron tube dimmers are pretty cool.
God. Oh, my God. Have you heard of Scott Galloway?
Of course.
He's a professor at NYU. And he wrote a book. He just came out with a book about this very subject. And it's already making huge effects in a lot of industries. But you're right. Absolutely. We are sort of one of the last peoples to have trickled down to this. I just think it's probably going to happen sooner than what we're all expecting. And I would be scared to death if I was starting a career right now. I really would be, of anything, because lawyers are going to be put out of business because lawyers they're already, paralegals
for sure
are being replaced.
Oh, yeah.
Totally being replaced. And that's usually the lawyer's first job, is coming as a paralegal, because all that research can be done by AI now.
I want to know if Leo is teaching his students to use, ChatGPT and Midjourney and DALL-E and all of that stuff.
Yes and no. And well, it depends on the subject. Yeah, we don't want this student to use ChatGPT to just write a paper for us. And ChatGPT is really good on that, and it's more and more difficult to know if that's written by an AI because you can just tell them to change a tone.
On Sunday, December 7th at 4:00 p.m. in Las Vegas at LDI, our little trade show, Leo is doing a session on the hidden features in Vectorworks and Lightwrite that can significantly enhance workflow. And I'm sure Sam is welcome to pop by and be part of this should he want to. But Leo, will you tell us what those hidden features are and what you're going to be talking about?
Sure, yeah. So I was planning something that, as I was working with students and some professionals, I noticed that there are some, I would call it underrated features or not very popular features that could be used to help our workflow. Yeah. So for example, use the summary tools. Yeah. I see a lot of students. One of my student for the last production, he's very smart. He's putting a single line set in a spreadsheet and to use that to calculate the weight, so we can balance the counterweight. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but there are some features in Vectorworks. It already have that summary feature. So we could just use that. Yeah, some other things like data visualization. I'm not sure if a lot of people using that. Sometimes we want to change a color, for example, a 26-degree lighting symbol. The one way to do it is to change the symbol, but that's kind of, you've done that and that's it. If you change your mind, it's still there. You need to change the symbol again. But with data visualization, we can assign different ways we want it to represent. Yeah. So that sometimes it's really helpful when I do a search or when I apply a data visualization. It can help me to find or highlight certain fixtures from the plot with hundreds of different instruments. Yeah, and some other stuff like numbering. Now more and more people using that method, at least for my students. I always tell them to use the numbering tools instead of click one fixture and manually type them in. So that takes a very long time. And of course, on the LightWrite side, yeah, there's I find the label for fixtures or instruments are very helpful, especially when we're prepping. I don't see a lot of people, well, at least in my region, using that. And whenever I see people use that, I'm very excited. Yeah, because that's so efficient to prepare the equipment and make it so easy for the electrician to know what the address is, where the instrument should go. Yeah, things like that.
Do we have time for one more question?
Depends on the question.
I'll throw it out to either Sam or Leo. Just quickly answer. A lot of times on projects that I do, my assistant designer will do the drafting and LightWrite and all the paperwork. But sometimes the gaffer or the master electrician will do it. A lot of the designers I work with prefer their gaffer to do it. I always prefer the designer. It seems to make more sense, and the end product, as a designer myself, is easier for me to understand. Do you do different education for electricians who want to use the software as opposed to designers, or is it all the same?
I would say absolutely. There's a bit of a different use case. You know, if you talk about why LightWrite was created, it was created to help a Broadway lighting associate, right? It has evolved significantly since then, and really a lot of the features are geared more towards electricians. So there's definitely it's definitely a multifaceted program at this point, and there's a little bit of overlap in things like common paperwork where you're looking at an instrument schedule or whatnot, right? Those are languages that everyone can talk about. But when Leo talked about labels beforehand, a lot of designers don't care or don't know about labels, and that's fine. You know, one of the things I love about LightWrite is that it serves all these different people and their different needs for the production. That in tandem with all these different tools like Vectorworks, and we can harp back to to different tools versus one tool. But I think it's nice that you have different programs doing exactly what you want, and different people use them in different ways. But yeah, there absolutely is a different focus that we take when we're talking about the program to say, hey, you're going to be a designer and you're focused on a few different things, and that is communicating your design to whoever's going to hang the show, whether that be the gaffer on a TV project or the production electrician or whatnot. If you are the electrician, you're then handed that, and you're responsible for a whole host of other things that are related to the practical nature of how do we implement this. So I would say absolutely.
I just find the paperwork done by electricians is harder for me to understand than the paperwork I'm given by my assistant designers. There's a whole different thought process.
Well, how do they decide who's going to do it?
It just depends on the budget. Sometimes I don't have the budget to bring an associate or an assistant along, and the electrician just has to do it by expediency and budget.
Yeah. For me, I think, for the student, the young professional, I encourage them to know both. Yeah, because they don't know what's the next job. Maybe they're doing ALD work, assistant work. They can do it the way their lighting designer want, or maybe they will be the production electrician. So, but if they are dreaming to be an lighting designer, they can impress the lighting designer by their paperwork. So, yeah.
Well, it's like what you said before. It makes it more marketable.
Well, Leo and Sam, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a really interesting discussion. We hit on a lot of different topics. I wanted to ask Leo a little bit about what he's found in Stan's old office, because I could just imagine what the hell's in there.
Probably
I'd be real careful.
Some dead iguanas.
The truss is still there.
Did you meet Stan?
Yes.
Was he there part of the interview?
Yeah,
really?
he was in the interview, and then by the time I got here, we went out for a couple of times. And
nice. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
We love Stan. He's a brother of ours, and he's a wonderful guy. And we always tease him a lot, because nowadays he's not on the show anymore. We tease the hell out of him because he can't defend himself, which is even better. And Sam, thank you very much. It's great to meet you, man.
Likewise.
And good luck with everything, both of
Thanks.
you. It's an exciting time with a lot of challenges, and both of you are going to you're at the cusp, and please, please make it work. Well, the rocking sounds of the Luminoids tell us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, you will have to deal with me, Snoot from the Snoot Group. And don't get it twisted. Just because I married one of these losers does not mean I will go easy on you. So don't fuck with me.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers
And Sister.
Thank you, Ellen. Coming to you from Long Beach, St. Bart's, Gainesville, the Lone Star State, and New York, New York.
And be sure to join us next week when we share more new lighting shenanigans and serve you more of our casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We will see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye.